Welcome to the Academy of Business Abroad. How to invest yourself or do business with Chinese investors. Subscribe to the Academy of Business Abroad channel and go for it. China has long been called the world's workshop. This is especially noticeable in household appliances, electronics and everyday household goods. Products of even the most famous world brands, no matter what label they came out under, can be partially or fully produced in China. Any company can find on the Chinese market a manufacturer corresponding to its interests, practically without risking anything, to make an order through Alibaba, order customization of the product and produce it under its own brand. This mechanism has been worked out to the last detail. Alibaba monitors the security of transactions, logistics companies provide guaranteed delivery, contact people are usually extremely polite and available at almost any time of the day and night. Local surveyors for a very small price will check the quality of manufacturing and packaging of the goods intended for shipment. The only risks that the buyer bears are related to the fact that the selected goods may not be competitive enough in comparison with similar Chinese products, or that they may not arrive in the time frame the customer expected. The latter happens quite often and is usually related not to the lack of haste of the Chinese partner, but to the system of long Chinese holidays, when production facilities are simply closed. The most notable of them is the Chinese New Year, which is celebrated in the second half of February and officially lasts 7 days, but in reality it lasts at least 2 weeks, as all the weekends that happen during this time are added to it. The second long holiday, the founding day of the PRC, lasts for 5 days with the addition of the same weekend. Another weekly holiday, Labor Day, has been reduced from 5 days to 1 in recent years. With this level of cooperation, all communication can take place online and there is little need for face-to-face meetings. Correspondence is usually conducted via Alibaba, mail servers, but often also via WhatsApp, which is banned in China. For the convenience of customers, Chinese sellers go all out. Another thing is when the level of your business is such that it requires both your visits to China and the reception of delegations from China in your country. In this case, you will certainly need both knowledge of Chinese traditions and some peculiarities of doing business with Chinese representatives, which we will tell you about further on. So, what customs are important to remember? It is customary for the Chinese to give gifts. During private visits it can be sweets, tea or wine. It is important to remember that the number of gifts should not be odd, such numbers are considered unlucky. That is, you can choose for a gift, for example, wine and candy or 2 bottles of wine. It is also impossible to give 4 gifts or gifts of black and white color, they are considered a symbol of death. Clocks are also considered to be the same symbol. A gift should be given or received with 2 hands, and the same applies to a business card. When meeting Chinese people usually make do with a nod of the head. But when meeting a foreigner for the first time, it can be a handshake, but the Chinese should be the first to extend his hand. It is not customary to look each other in the eye, it is a manifestation of rudeness. Just like crossing your arms or legs. Hands should not be kept in pockets when talking. Women should not be held under the arm or helped to put on their coats. Any touching from strangers is avoided by the Chinese. Expressing emotions or waving your hands when talking is also considered rude. The Chinese in general are a very reserved people and it is better to come to a meeting with them armed with the above-mentioned knowledge. The scale of Chinese business is often mind-boggling. Once at an international conference I sat in the front row next to a Chinese man. The speaker was boring, we had a nice conversation and exchanged business cards. Then, my vis-a-vis was invited to the podium and it turned out that he was the head of a company with 3 million employees worldwide. Keep in mind that any large company, be it state-owned and to a slightly lesser extent private, is carefully controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. One-on-one meetings are rare, usually quite extensive delegations. And in them, a party representative is invariably present. During negotiations, he is usually silent. Naturally, during negotiations, the head of the company leads the conversation, but he consults with the party boss on any more or less significant issue. It must be said that the knowledge of English in China is rather limited, and they often use the services of interpreters. On no account do not talk politics. During dinner, when you are invited by the Chinese, try to try all the dishes. You can talk with a full mouth, it is a sign of pleasure. At the end it is better to leave some food on your plate as a sign that you are full, otherwise they will bring more. When your host pours you tea, tap the table with your index and middle finger. This is a sign of respect and gratitude. Chinese people are not usually in a hurry. When negotiating, they listen attentively, nod their heads, ask questions, and usually do not give their opinion about the project. Or they say that it is very interesting and they will definitely consider what they have heard. Be patient in advance. When the issue concerns state-owned companies, deliberation can take months. Usually their decision depends on the head of the industry committee. For example, for our company, the movement started only after we got into such a committee with the help of the embassy in China and got the support of its head. We were going to build a diesel fuel production plant using a unique cost-effective technology with the involvement of Chinese investors. From the committee, the idea of the project reached the Prime Minister of China and he expressed his approval. It seemed to us that the future would develop rapidly. Indeed, potential investors from Chinese state-owned companies began to visit us. They nodded approvingly, asked for more and more clarifications, but things did not move. Then we approached a private company that owns several oil refineries. Within a week, the president of the company and a group of assistants flew in to visit us. The new delegation belonged to a different Chinese ethnic group. They differed from the previous ones not only in appearance but also mentally. In the evening we had a lavish dinner. Early in the morning the head of the Chinese company played golf. By 10 a.m. the industry minister assured the Chinese of state support for the project, and by the end of the day our investor made a proposal. For a plant with a capex of about $1 billion, he takes a loan from a Chinese bank for the amount of $1.5 billion. $500 million he lends us on the security of our 20% stake, but the money does not go to us, but directly to the construction of the plant. The Chinese kept 80% of the shares. We actually received only the obligation to repay $500 million from the future profits of the plant or another source within 5 years. At the same time, all purchases of raw materials and other components had to go through the investor's firm. If we had agreed to such conditions, we would have lost any influence on the project from day one and would have become indebted to the Chinese, probably for the rest of our lives. Nevertheless, they found it possible to make such an offer. The realization of how difficult negotiators the Chinese are does not come immediately. There is a well-known expression, the East is a delicate matter. Behind the external facade there is always an interest not expressed in words. Reputation is of the utmost importance to the Chinese. They are often very cautious in negotiations in order not to lose face. Personal relationships are of the utmost importance in business decisions. The Chinese clearly recognize themselves as part of a huge ancient culture and naturally expect respect from others. They are focused on long-term cooperation. Among officials, politicians, and businessmen, you will almost never find a person with gray hair. Gray hair is a sign of age, and therefore a sign of weakness, a stopgap for career. No other country in the world consumes so much black hair dye. The Chinese are always trim, in good shape, and expect their potential partners to be in a similar condition. You have to be able to listen to them, and be very well prepared for the technical or economic details of a negotiation. You are the one who has to get into their situation more than they into yours. China's economy is considered a planned economy. The government creates a 5-year plan and those industries that are prioritized receive significant government support. For foreign companies, primarily through VAT refunds. Be sure to familiarize yourself with the 5-year plan. If your business interests fit into this category, the project will almost certainly get the green light, and even free or no-cost land to build a new production facility. Otherwise, it will be a waste of time. Of course, the culture of such a huge country with many languages and dialects cannot be monolithic, as it seems at first glance. Each of the large regions has its own characteristic features, for which you should definitely be prepared. Remember also, that the very notion of a world workshop is also changing. The standard of living and, accordingly, wages in the country are rising, and the Chinese are increasingly focused on the production of high-tech products in their country, and low value-added goods for Europe or America begin to order from neighbors, for example, in Bangladesh. Maybe in this case you should look at this country too? If you found this information useful, please like and subscribe to the Academy of Business Abroad channel.